Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. This episode is brought to you by The Wellness Paradigm, a holistic health coaching company shifting the way that women understand and heal their bodies. Through bioenergetic testing, functional lab testing, and functional nutrition, we uncover what traditional approaches often overlook so you can stop guessing, start healing, and finally feel like yourself again. No more one size fits all protocols, just real answers, deep rooted protocols, deep rooted healing, and the clarity and confidence you deserve to feel incredible. It's time to shift the paradigm of women's health. Now, on to our show. Hello, Tenya.
Hi.
Guys, I'm so excited she's here. I think this is going to be a very insightful and needed conversation for many. But she is an energy healer and self-care coach who empowers women, or I think you work with multiple
Yep.
people, but
Yep.
primarily women, to transform their lives through a blend of energy healing, self-care practices, and emotional release techniques. Her work merges science, metaphysics, and emotional intelligence to create a holistic path towards lasting wellness. And I remember reading yours and I was like, oh, this is so aligned. Both of us are very much into like the science and also, these other very important elements to healing. So I cannot wait to dive in and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I'd love for you to tell people how you got started in this work and a little more about yourself.
Oh, how I got started in this work. 2018 was an amazing year for our family. My husband and our oldest was graduating from college. Our twins were graduating from high school, and we got the opportunity to purchase our forever home on the Chesapeake Bay,
Mm,
which is, it's like a 2-minute walk from the beach.
mm,
Um, and we'd been wanting to move back here for many years and got the opportunity to. But when we moved here, it was not what I thought it was going to be. First of all, we moved back in the winter, and going to the beach during Maryland winters is you just don't do it. It's cold. We're like in the middle of like spring and winter. It's horrible. And of course you run into earlier evenings, and it was just not what I thought it was going to be. And so 2019, my anxiety and depression that I had suffered with my entire life off and on started to resurface. And I know now that it started to resurface because I was no longer being a busy mom. I
mhm,
was no longer having all of this stuff that was keeping me distracted from all these feelings and emotions that I had been stuffing down for years.
mhm,
And because we were living at the beach, I chose to use alcohol. I started smoking again to numb and push those down. And now, mind you, this was only like 7 years ago. So it wasn't, it hasn't been very long that I've been in this genre of healing. And I really noticed that I needed more help when I was driving home from work one day and had the thought that what if I just drive my van into a telephone pole?
mm,
Would that give me enough time off
mm,
without having to ask for time off?
mm,
Because I didn't want to have to ask for time off to kind of figure things out because I was ashamed and embarrassed by how I was feeling. And it was at that point I thought, gosh, I should really get some help. If I'm thinking of hurting myself to get a break, then there's seriously something that needs to be addressed. And luckily, I knew enough to not fall into those patterns of what's wrong with me.
mm,
Like, because I grew up with a parent that had a mental illness, I knew that there wasn't anything wrong with me, but that there was just stuff that I had to deal with and I hadn't been dealing with it, or I hadn't been dealing with it appropriately. And so I went the traditional routes to start medication, talk therapy.
mhm,
After about 8 weeks, I was just numb. I wasn't feeling happy, but I wasn't sad any. I wasn't as sad as I used to be. I wasn't crying as much, but I really was not feeling the joy and the happiness that I wanted to feel having being living the life that I was living, because my life on the outside was really quite spectacular if you're looking at it from the outside. But I just didn't feel that way inside. And so when I went back to the doctor, they're like, well, why don't we up your medication? And I was like, I've been down this road before and I didn't want to go down that road again. I didn't like the side effects that the medication was giving me. Aside from not having to have feelings, there were other physical side effects that were impeding on the relationship with my husband. I was gaining weight again. It was just, I didn't like it.
Mhm.
And so I did what I should not have done was I cut the medication out cold turkey. I do not recommend doing that. If you're on medication, make sure you taper off and have a conversation with your doctor because there's side effects to that as well. um, but then I sat at my desk in tears and I was like, Lord God, universe, I don't care who's listening. I want something that's going to get rid of this. And I put it out there because I knew about the secret. So I was like, I'm going to manifest what's going to get rid of this. And so I did a Google search for holistic emotional healing because I didn't want to take anything to ingest.
Mm.
I didn't want to take supplements. I didn't want to take I didn't even want to do it through food at that point. I was just like, I want to keep living my life, but I want something that's going to get rid of this. And that's when the emotion code popped up. And that was where this journey of, and I say becoming clean from anxiety and depression, because it really helped me to see my mental unwellness from a different perspective. Um, to where it encouraged me to relearn how to feel my feelings. It taught me, it gave me things into my awareness that taught me how to reparent myself, because as much as we as parents try to do the best we can for our kids, we don't know it all.
Mm-mm.
And my parents didn't know it all. My parents didn't know how to manage their feelings, how to teach for kids how to have their emotions. And so I can't blame them for me learning how to stuff my feelings down because it's all they knew how to do.
Mhm.
And so within 4 months of learning the emotion code, the body code, another learning about entity attachments and offensive energies and that kind of thing, um, I was about 80% healed for my anxiety and depression. I was laughing again. I was having fun, and it was just pure fun. Um it wasn't supplemented fun is how I, it wasn't because I was drinking or smoking or anything like that. But it was just pure joy that I was starting to feel. And then I realized that I needed more self-care. I needed to relearn how to be with myself and just enjoy being with myself, which is still a process. Even 7 years later, it's still a process. Um, but December of 2020, I was 100% healed from my anxiety and depression. So within 6 months,
It's
I
amazing.
I felt 100% healed from it.
That's incredible.
It really was because I felt within 6 months that I had never felt before, that I can't remember ever feeling.
And do you feel like the missing puzzle piece for you was learning self-care, learning what that felt like, learning how to kind of implement it, learning that it wasn't selfish to do it, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there was, and I had tried to do self-care before that. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and so I had done the clean eating.
Mm-hmm.
I had done working out, and it was focused more on weight loss
Mm-hmm.
at that point, but it never stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was so much of self-care. There's so many things that are included in self-care that people don't really understand, I think.
Mm-hmm.
When a lot of people think of self-care, they're thinking of weekends away,
Right.
monthly massages, glass of red wine at the end of a night, getting your nails done. While those are all great aspects of self-care, the self-care that I'm talking about is not always pretty. It's not always enjoyable, but it is what is going to give you tools for the rest of your life so that you can have a thriving life, not living in survival all the time, which is what many of us human beings are doing is we're just surviving day to day.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, many conversations on this podcast about it, but it's really amazing, and I say that kind of in a loose way, when you look at trapped emotions, when you look at suppressed emotions, and you look at autoimmune diseases, particularly in women, Hashi's is one of the biggest ones,
Yep.
with women, right? Or, and then you have this whole cascade of weight loss resistance is a big one with that, right? And it's like, obviously being in the holistic health space, it's like understanding that it's not just the diet and the exercise because people feel bad about themselves, right? Why isn't this sticking? Something must be wrong with me.
Right.
It's like there's so much deeper into this,
Yeah.
when you go into, self-worth, self-care, emotions, things like that, but that's the stuff that people don't always want to look at because it's easier to take the supplements. It's easier to just
Yep.
do the nutrition, get the workouts in. It's almost a distraction, right?
Yeah,
Um,
it absolutely is. I mean, I can remember being on a doctor had me on like, I don't know, 20 different supplements a day.
well, that's the thing too, in with going into holistic healthcare, like, why I got more into bioenergetics instead of just functional labs is functional lab testing was turning into just supplementing instead of medicating.
Right.
And, there was a huge gap there too, and it's like, sure, the supplements can help, but you're not going to out supplement your way out of like to full health.
Right.
Come
Right.
from something deeper. And that's where the nervous system work, energy healing, self-care, all that comes into play. And that's what I try to emphasize so
Yeah.
much on this podcast because they're all important. They all have their time and place. Like
Right.
you can't just do the energy work and then, eat like crap and, live in a toxic environment, right? Like, I mean, there has to be a blend, but I really think it's important to understand that there needs to be both, right?
Right. Yeah, there has to, yeah, you have to focus on, I tell my clients all the time, you can't just do the conscious work.
Yeah.
You can't just do the subconscious work. You can't just do the physical work or the emotional work. You have to do them all. And a lot of people don't realize is that they are doing the energetic work, but the energetic work that they're typically doing is why am I not succeeding? Why am I not enough? They're doing that. They're bringing in those negative energies, those negative emotions, instead of looking at it from a more optimistic, a more positive approach. And it's not positive toxicity. It's not ignoring that. And I try not I just try not to label, for me, I don't label things good or bad, but I know for human existence we do have to have labels. So I try to focus more on the good and be more optimistic because that helps me have a more, like I always say, a more thriving life
Mm-hmm.
instead of just surviving. If I get a flat tire, I got a flat tire because there may have been an accident up ahead that I was avoiding by getting a flat tire. Yeah, it may make me late for an appointment, but I'm still going to make it to the appointment at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas somebody else might look at that flat tire and go, my day's completely ruined
Yep.
because I made that appointment 6 months ago and now I have to reschedule it and might not get to go back to it for another 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's all how you look at things and what you focus on is what you bring into your life.
Oh, 100%. Um, and I think something that would be interesting to chat about is, mentioning you have to do it all. How would somebody, women who deal with burnout, this
Mhm.
comes up in, I feel like almost every conversation, just women are overwhelmed. Women are inundated with so many things they need to do. They don't feel well,
Mhm.
and it's like, it seems intimidating. I have to do it all, right?
Right. It does.
How would you maybe reframe this and maybe help guide people who are dealing with maybe anxiety, depression, feeling unwell into, guiding them into this maybe one step at a time,
Mhm.
um, and making them feel like this is approachable, this is doable.
I would say, first of all, you're not going to do it all in the beginning.
No.
There are little steps that you can take to make these little steps grow. And I always tell my clients the first step that you need to take is to look at your sleep patterns.
Mm,
Because if you are not getting enough sleep, you're not getting restorative sleep, you are not going to be able to do anything else. So the first thing you have to look at is, what is your sleep schedule like? Are you on your phone until 12 o'clock at night when you have to get up at 5 or 6 in the morning to get ready for work? Or your kids wake you up. Like my twins used to wake up when they started sleeping through the night, they were getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning for a year. And then it moved to 6.
ugh.
So like I had to change my sleep schedule very early on to going to bed by 9 o'clock because I knew they were going to get up at 5.
Hmm.
And so I had to change my schedule.
Hmm.
And at the time we didn't have phones, but even now I'm not on my phone much. I still am. I still check it before bed, but I'm not on it scrolling through for 2 hours before bed.
Hmm.
It I'm you have to change your patterns to create new patterns. And sleep is the most important aspect of a healthy lifestyle. So I
Hmm.
would say first and foremost, focus on getting adequate restorative sleep and figure out what you need to do to get that first, and then start adding other stuff in.
I I could preach this till the cows come
I
home.
know.
But I can't tell you. I think this has come up on literally the last 5 podcasts. It's like I've had so many clients come in on there and take forward, and they're like, "I'm the best 5 hour sleeper you're ever gonna
Yeah.
meet." I'm like, "That's not a good brag."
Yeah, no.
And it's so hard because people think quotation self-care is scrolling at
Right.
night. It's the only time you get, right? From work, from kids, from life. But I think what people need to also understand is that's an unhealthy coping mechanism, just of disassociation, of freeze, whatever you want to call it. And
Right.
it's like, that alone, nervous system wise, isn't good. But also from my nerdy science side, that blue light before bed blocks
Yeah.
melatonin and really disrupts sleep pattern and circadian rhythm, which is
Yeah.
imperative for hormonal health, health
It
and
is. It is. And if you have a hard time getting away from the scrolling, get yourself some blue blocker glasses
Yep.
to start with,
Mm-hmm.
and see how that changes your sleep patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Invest in a $20 pair of glasses, or
Yep.
get a red pair of glasses, just the cheap plastic ones, and wear those. It's going to be annoying at first because all you're going to be seeing is red through your through your glasses, but it's going to make a difference. It
Mm-hmm.
might be subtle, but it's going to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you get your sleep pattern in check, and you're sleeping 8 to 9 hours a night, and it's good sleep, you're not using sleep aids, you're not
Mm-hmm.
using medications to fall asleep. I will always recommend that if you are having trouble going to sleep, try some chamomile tea or some mullein leaf tea, something that's going to help just bring down that level of sleepiness, just kind of induce it a little bit, but it's just bringing that in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a big jolt to the system,
Mm-hmm.
but you're allowing your system to relax naturally. um then you can start adding in other things like meditation. Start with 1 minute a day. Don't try to go full on 20, 60 minutes the first time, but start with 1 minute. Start with some affirmations. Talk
Mm-hmm.
to yourself in the mirror. you know Reframe your thinking. There are so many different things that you can do that we have time for. And I'll tell people all the time, you tell me you don't have time for something, I'll find you the time.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how much time you have on your phone. How
Mm-hmm.
often are you on your phone?
Mm-hmm.
How often what does Facebook say how long you're on your Facebook app for, or Instagram? 3 hours? Yeah, you have time to do self-care.
Well, and
But
self-care can be
it's
two
up here
minutes,
too.
you know? It doesn't have to be I don't
Yeah,
take an hour-long massage, you know?
right, right. And yeah, and I will tell you, in the beginning, it's going to feel like you're doing self-care for 2 hours a day
Mm.
because you need it.
Well, and I will say, somebody who used to quotation never have time and, thought meditation was stupid and didn't think it was stupid, but just like never found the quotation time.
Right, right.
It feels uncomfortable at first
It
to do
does.
it and to take the time and you feel like you're not being productive,
Hmm.
right? And you're like, okay, and gradually your body legitimately rewires. Now I could sit and meditate for an hour. If you would have told me years ago, I would have laughed in your face,
Yeah,
but your body literally rewires. But you have to give it the time, patience to let it do that instead of just being like, oh, nope, see, didn't work. Didn't
right,
work for me.
right.
See, I'm making more reasons on why this isn't working for me, you
Yep. And
know?
you're going to have days where that hour does feel like, even after being consistent with it. I'm sure you have days where you get into that meditation and your body is still like, oh no, I have so much to do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you have to sometimes constantly retrain your ego going, no, we don't have to fall back into those patterns
Hmm.
because it is habit building. And sometimes those habits do take several years to build into a consistent practice,
Yep.
right? It took us years to get into the habit of scrolling on our phones,
Hmm.
right? It's going to take us years to break those habits as well sometimes. So don't be so hard on listeners, don't be so hard on yourselves when you feel like you're falling backwards because you're human.
Hmm.
You are around people all day long who are not investing their time in themselves. And sometimes that's going to rub off on you on an energetic basis, and you're going to feel what they're feeling. And you're going to be like, "Ugh, it's so much easier to not do anything."
Yeah,
But just think about where you were when you weren't doing anything and
true.
how you're able to get so much more done because you're taking care of yourself.
It's true. If somebody is maybe having, let's say they're stuck in this anxiety, depression spiral, it can be so hard to take that moment, to shift the patterns, right? They want to, a lot of people are like, I want to do, I know I need this. I know these things are good, but I cannot, I can't commit to it or it doesn't work, whatever the
Right.
story is it's in their head. What would be one or two little wisdom tidbits you could share if somebody's kind of in that cycle?
So the first thing I would do is it was tell them to practice grounding each day because that's a form of energy healing.
Hmm.
You can transmute the energies that you're feeling, the emotional energies that you are having, and ask that those be transmuted because you can't destroy energy. And we don't want to send negative energy back down into the earth because it's just going to sit there and it's going to come back up one way or another. So I always tell my clients, give yourself 1 minute to imagine those feelings that you're feeling, that sadness, that shame, that guilt, that you're transmuting that into unconditional love. And if you don't know what unconditional love feels like, look up a Care Bear stare. Look up a Care Bear stare and imagine that that is what you're doing when you're sending out these emotions, that you're transmuting them into unconditional love as a Care Bear stare. And you're transmuting those back out. And you're helping yourself to reground and connect with the earth, connect with the earth's energy. Because she's got so much of it to give. And just imagine yourself pulling that energy up, whether it's through a thread out of your root chakra or just feeling it through your heart. You can there's so many different ways to reground. But placing your hands on your heart and feeling that breath going through your nostrils and out your mouth can help you to reground. And in that moment that you're feeling that relaxation kind of creep in, don't let your ego pop back in and go, oh no, this isn't working. Ask your ego to step to the side. And it's going to be a constant practice. And that's really what it is starting to heal from the depression, from the anxiety that you've been feeling for years and ignoring for years, suppressing for years. It's going to feel horrible coming up.
Mm.
I'm not going to lie, it's going to feel horrible.
Yeah.
But when you start to allow yourself to feel those emotions, to allow that sadness to come up, and either let yourself cry, let yourself pout, let yourself feel heavy, it will release. But if you've been holding on to it like I was for 45 years, it's going to take some time. And that's when you should reach out to an energy healer, someone trusted, a therapist, a doctor, a friend who can listen, who wants to listen, because not everybody is prepared or can listen because of their own stuff they have going on, which is why I stress find someone who's not tied to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because while our friends and family want to be there for us, oftentimes they don't know how. They think they know how, but they really don't. Because
Yeah.
we want them to try and help fix us.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't do that. And it's really unfair for us to expect them to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
So find a trusted energy healer, find a trusted therapist or a doctor that can listen to you from a non-judgmental place.
Mm-hmm.
Because no matter what it is you're going through, somebody has gone through it before as well, and they know how to help. Um, as an energy healer, my clients don't have to relive through their traumas, through their emotions. We find that energetic ball. It's kind of like those burrs that you get on your socks when you walk through a field. That's how I see these energies. It could be an energy of depression, it could be an energy of sadness. And we find them, and sometimes we need to know what age, what lifetime, or if it might even be on a different timeline that you've brought these into this human existence. And if you're ready to let them go, they come up and we can let that energy go. And that leaves the space for you to be able to heal on a conscious level. And that's what happened with me was I tried to do all the self-care
Mm-hmm.
in the world before I found energy healing.
Yeah.
And it didn't stick. Once I started doing the energy healing, that freed up the space for me to be able to do the conscious work.
Yep.
And now that I've done the conscious work, I'm now able to get into doing the physical work.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it wasn't something that I could do all of them all at once. I had to heal one part before I could do another and before I could do another. And that might be you as well, as you may not be able to do it all at once.
Mm-hmm.
You may have to keep taking baby steps in order to get to the life where you're looking at your life going, I'm living a damn good life. You don't have to be making a lot of money. You don't have to have a lot of friends. You don't even have to be in a relationship with someone to love the life that you're already living. When you can be in a space with just yourself, I think it's incredible once you get there. And I'm getting there. It's been a while, but I'm getting there. And I think it takes a while for people to get to the point where they can be happy no matter what space they're in.
Yeah.
Because we do still have all of this human existence stuff that we have to deal with. It's just a matter of how are you responding to it instead of reacting.
So true. I love those thoughts and thank you for sharing that. And I would love for you to share a little bit more on where people can find you if maybe they're ready for energy healing, they're ready for, leveling up their mental health, physical health, where can people find you?
You can find me on my website at designyourexistence.com. And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Design Your Existence.
Love that. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here, for sharing all your wisdom. I always love it if there's little nuggets that you took away. Either leaving a review is always so helpful to reach more people, or also just DMing us. I feel like, it's so fun to hear feedback from you guys. So thank you guys for listening. Really appreciate it, and we will catch you on the next show.